In the ancient world, people looked at the night sky, the restless sea, the cycle of seasons, and the fragile nature of human life, and they asked the same questions we still ask today. Where did all this come from? Why is the world ordered the way it is? And why does chaos always seem to lurk just beneath the surface of life? Long before philosophy and science took shape, these questions were explored through stories. Stories of gods, battles, beginnings, and purpose. Genesis stands among these ancient voices, yet it speaks with a tone that is both familiar and radically different. When we open the first pages of Scripture, we are not stepping into a modern textbook. We are entering an ancient conversation about creation and chaos, meaning and order. Genesis does not deny the reality of chaos. It begins with it. Darkness covers the deep. The earth is without form and empty. But Genesis also makes a quiet, profound claim. Chaos is not ultimate. It is not eternal. It does not rival God. It is something God addresses, shapes, and orders by His Word. As we read carefully, it becomes clear that Genesis was written in a world already filled with creation stories. The people of Israel lived among cultures that told their own stories about how the world began. These stories were not distant myths. They shaped how people understood their gods, their societies, and their own place in the world. Genesis enters this landscape not by copying these stories, but by engaging them, responding to them, and transforming them. This is Bible Scope, your place to find light, find truth, and find purpose. If this journey speaks to your heart, like the video and subscribe to walk through Scripture with us. One of the most well-known ancient creation stories is the Enuma Elish, a Babylonian epic that tells of a violent struggle among the gods. In this story, the universe begins with a chaotic mixture of waters, personified as divine beings. Creation emerges through conflict. A younger god defeats a chaotic sea deity and forms the world from her divided body. Order is achieved through violence. Humanity is later created, not as a reflection of divine care, but as a workforce meant to relieve the gods of labor. At first glance, Genesis seems to share some surface similarities with this story. Both speak of primordial waters. Both describe a movement from chaos to order. Both present the world as something structured and purposeful. But when we listen closely, the differences are striking. In Genesis, there is no battle among gods. There is no rival power threatening God's sovereignty. Chaos is not personified as a divine enemy. It is simply there, unformed and unordered, awaiting God's creative word. God does not struggle to overcome it. He speaks, and it responds. This contrast reveals something essential about the biblical view of God. God is not one among many. He does not rise to power through conflict. He is already sovereign. Creation is not the result of divine survival, but of divine intention. Another ancient text, the Atrahasis Epic, also offers insight into how ancient people understood creation. In this story, humanity is created because the gods grow tired of doing work themselves. Humans are made from clay mixed with the blood of a slain god, marking them from the beginning as beings born of conflict and sacrifice. Their purpose is utilitarian. When humans become too numerous and noisy, the gods attempt to wipe them out through plague and flood. Genesis again engages similar themes but reframes them entirely. Humanity is formed from dust, yes, but not mixed with divine bloodshed. Instead, God breathes life into the dust. Human life begins not with violence, but with intimacy. Humans are not created as servants to ease God's burden. They are created in God's image, entrusted with responsibility and dignity. These differences are not accidental. Genesis is speaking into a world shaped by these myths, offering a radically different vision of God and humanity. Where other stories see chaos as something that must be violently subdued, Genesis presents chaos as something God calmly orders. Where other stories see humanity as an afterthought or a problem, Genesis sees humanity as a purposeful part of creation. The theme of separation is another shared motif. Ancient Near Eastern myths often describe creation as the result of dividing elements. Sky is separated from earth, waters above from waters below. Genesis uses similar language. God separates light from darkness, waters from waters, land from sea. But again, the tone matters. The separations in Genesis are not acts of violence. They are acts of wisdom. God creates boundaries not to dominate, but to sustain life. This pattern reveals a deep theological truth. Order is not imposed through force. It is established through wisdom and care. God's authority is not threatened by chaos. It transforms it. As we read Genesis alongside these ancient stories, we begin to see that Scripture is not isolated from its cultural context. It speaks within it, but it also reshapes it. Genesis affirms that the world has order and meaning, but it grounds that order in the character of a single, good creator. This has implications for how we understand the phrase creation versus chaos. In the ancient world, chaos was not just physical disorder. It represented fear, uncertainty, and the limits of human control. Storms, floods, famine, and disease all pointed to forces beyond human power. Creation stories were attempts to explain why these forces existed and how they related to the divine. Genesis acknowledges these fears, but offers a different response. Chaos exists, but it is not divine. It is not ultimate. It does not define reality. God does. This perspective continues throughout Scripture. When the flood narrative appears later in Genesis, it echoes ancient flood stories found across cultures. Yet even here, the differences are telling. The flood in Genesis is not the result of divine irritation or noise. It is a moral response to violence and corruption, and it is paired with preservation, covenant, and promise. The biblical God does not erase creation when it disappoints him. He commits to it. He enters into covenant with humanity and with the earth itself. These themes invite personal reflection. The struggle between creation and chaos is not only cosmic. It is deeply human. We experience moments of order and meaning, followed by seasons of confusion and loss. Ancient people told stories to make sense of this tension. Genesis invites us to see our lives within a larger story, one where chaos is real but not final. When Genesis presents God speaking light into darkness, it is not only describing the beginning of the universe, it is revealing how God works. He brings clarity where there is confusion. He brings order where there is disorder. He brings purpose where there is emptiness. The ancient myths often leave humanity trapped between capricious gods and uncontrollable forces. Genesis offers hope. Humanity is not at the mercy of divine moods. The Creator is consistent, purposeful, and good. It is also important to note that Genesis does not dismiss the insights of ancient cultures entirely. Shared motifs suggest shared human questions. People across cultures sense that the world was not random, that order mattered, that human life had significance. Genesis affirms these intuitions while redirecting them toward a clearer understanding of God. This approach models how Scripture engages with the world. It does not isolate itself. It listens, responds, and transforms. It speaks truth without fear, grounded in the confidence that God is Lord of all creation. As we move slowly through these early chapters, we begin to see that Genesis is not primarily concerned with explaining the mechanics of creation. It is concerned with meaning. Who is God? Who are we? And how should we live in a world shaped by His Word? The ancient struggle to impose order on chaos reflects a deep human longing. We want the world to make sense. We want our lives to matter. Genesis tells us that this longing is not misplaced. It points us toward the Creator who brings order not through conflict, but through relationship in a world still marked by chaos. This message remains deeply relevant. We continue to face forces beyond our control. We continue to wrestle with uncertainty. Genesis does not promise a life free from chaos, but it assures us that chaos does not have the final word. As we read these texts prayerfully, we are invited to trust the God who speaks order into being. to live as people shaped by His Word, to participate in His ongoing work of bringing light into darkness. As we've walked through this passage, what truth stood out to you? How might it shape the way you live today? If this exploration helped you grow, like the video and subscribe. Your journey through the pages is just beginning.